I have been seeing increasingly on LinkedIn, it's my version of social media, people posting about taking Waymo cars in San Fran and raving about the experience. And these people, the demographic is somewhat diverse in that it's not diverse, they're all tech people, but some are sending their kids, some are going themselves. I think that the wave is about to break.
I had this on the run sheet, which you never
I
looked
know,
at,
I
but
just,
not for about 8 weeks.
I thought it was so boring because I thought it was so far away, but I think you've been right about this.
It's one of these things that it's taken so... I listened to the older Quiet episodes. I'm like 2016 now. A few things I'll talk about that later. But in 2016, this is 8 years ago, they're talking about how it's imminent. So it's been this... It's a bit really it's the technology that cried wolf, really. It's been coming, it's coming. And Elon Musk saying next year it's coming. And I think Elon Musk in 2017 said they're going to have autonomous vehicles by 2018 or something like that. So because people have said it's coming, nobody believes it anymore. And Waymo's been really the tortoise in the hare. They've been quietly testing. They were testing in Arizona, in Phoenix for many years. They released it in San Fran. I think about 6 months ago they got authorization. And they've just started to ramp it up. In the last month, they're now doing, I think, 100,000 trips a week.
It's unbelievable.
That is a lot of trips. I don't know a proportion of total, but as you said, the feedback's been amazing. Waymo's talking about launching a Waymo teen program, in which case you basically get a subscription. Imagine your kid going to school,
not having to own a car or
Waymo. It's unbelievable
for sure.
I've always been of the view that autonomous vehicles will take over. It doesn't make sense that... You know how many people die in China every year from deaths on roads?
Well, there are a lot of people in China.
There are a lot, but do you know how many people die?
Oh, how would I know that?
1 million people.
All right, I'm sure it's not 1 million. Whatever the number is, it's not 1 million.
People die.
Whenever somebody wants to say a big number, they say, it's in China, 1 million. It's like when you say, if only I could sell one sock to every Chinese person, it would be a great business. Have you heard that before? But it's so ridiculous.
Well, I think even in the US, there's thousands of people, tens of thousands. So the number of people
there will
who
still
die,
be deaths with autonomous vehicles.
But it's a tiny fraction. Yeah, there was obviously the incident with Cruise recently.
But one of the biggest problems you should think about is this. When everyone is in autonomous vehicles, there will still be some accidents, but not many.
Tiny proportion.
But the transition... Like, what's interesting is that in San Fran, they haven't had to have separate lanes. They're just integrating with... And the problem with people is that they're erratic and they make bad decisions. And yet... they haven't been smashing into these autonomous vehicles, which I think is really interesting. I will say as well that one of the posts I saw said the cost of a particular trip was $20, where with an Uber they thought it would have been $30 plus a tip. So it is cheaper, obviously, removing the cost of the driver.
I think the cost of Uber is about 70% is the driver. Like it's a big percentage. So that should really go completely. So imagine how cheap that makes trips. That makes it, and you can do Uber, and you can do the pool thing because you can really easily automate the route based on that. I agree. I don't think I've been more excited about a technology, and this is a great credit to Alphabet, Google, and we criticize Google for lots of stuff. One thing I give a massive credit
for the name of the company, like Alphabet was. I mean, what was that?
Forget the name thing. The name's ridiculous, but
terrible.
We criticize Google for lots of stuff, but. And the sort of gouging monopoly they are to businesses, but they've spent
just
billions.
A minor point.
They've spent billions of dollars on this for no return thus far, and they are by far the market leader. I think Tesla will, because Tesla's got so much data, because Tesla's constantly collecting data from the cars every time you're driving it. They've got a big advantage there, but Waymo's so far ahead, and they are basically there. We've been waiting 10 years for this.
For Tesla. I know at some point we're going to talk about Tesla. I think. In the last 2 weeks, I've started to form a pretty strong view that I'll raise this again when we talk about Tesla.
Talk about it now.
Tesla might be a footnote in history.
If you look at Tesla's earnings last quarter, which is about 6 weeks old now, earnings plunged 40%. And there was competition from car makers. One interesting point, BMW led the EV brand rankings last month in Europe. With a 35% year-on-year increase. So BMW in Europe's overtaken Tesla now, pretty much. Maybe not in car sales, but they were in terms of brand recognition of EVs. BMW is now ahead of Tesla in Europe. They're obviously not there in the US yet. In China, you've got BYD who dominate, obviously.
Well, you're going to talk about this, but the game has just increasingly shifted to China. I think my recollection is if you look at a graph of EV uptake, outside China, it kind of rocketed till 2021 or something, and then slowed down dramatically. And now the curve is quite flat now in terms of ex-China EV uptake, which is bad news for Tesla.
Which is surprising because I drive an EV and I love it. I don't know why anybody would not get an EV. But let's separate EVs from autonomous, because they're two separate things. You can have autonomous, not EVs.
Tesla is predominantly EVs.
Tesla. If you look at Tesla, it made 1.8 billion profit in the June quarter. So let's annualize that at 8 billion or 7 billion. They've got a market cap of 700 billion. That's 100 times. So almost Tesla's entire market cap is based on this EV thing that Elon talks about. That's what's held up the market cap of the business. If Waymo is well ahead of Tesla there and Tesla can't catch it, that's $600 billion in market cap.
You said you said slightly the wrong thing. What you mean is Tesla, what you were trying to say, I think, is Tesla's future is all about the autonomous stuff. Yeah. You said the EV stuff.
Sorry, autonomous stuff.
I think so, but I think Tesla's got much bigger problems than that. Like China is not going well, and China is the growth market. Yeah. They are making cars, but they're not really selling cars at the volumes they thought they would sell them at. They're having stress around gross margins in their business.
No, I think the first point's not. I think they're selling enough cars. The gross margins issue, because they've dumped the price and haven't had that elasticity in volume to push it up. So
did you see what?
You're half right.
And did you see what happened in the last quarter? What saved their numbers?
Was it some sort of rebate thing?
No, it was something that was totally unrelated to cars.
Oh, was it Bitcoin or something?
No, it was, they've got this power business.
Oh, okay.
They had this leap, hundreds of millions of dollar revenue leap in the power business. I think it's part of what they bought. It's their battery business, basically. Yeah. And so if you look at their numbers for the last quarter, the numbers look all right as an overall quarter. But if you dig into it, I remember I took a look and I dug into it. It was basically rescued by this huge spike in their battery business.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And so how this company maintains a $700 billion US valuation when you've got Google, who's so far ahead in autonomous, and you got BYD who's selling more EVs. Then you got the traditional car makers like BMW who finally worked it out, and then you got Porsche and the high. So Tesla's kind of left with being that sort of mid-market Ford type EV business, which is fine, but it's got margin compression. So it's being priced as and I think Ford and GM PE multiples like 6. So if you give a multiple of 6 on Tesla, it's like a $20 billion business at best.
I called Tesla way too early. Like this is my problem is
that you call the top of Tesla.
Well, because I'm so cynical about
you're not alone
things in general. Yeah. And they kept running for like a decade after. But like what I always felt about Tesla, the analogy that says the first mover is the one that gets the arrows in its back. And so that's how I always felt it was going to be for Tesla, because I just never thought they'd get to the scale to be able to compete with Volkswagen Group, for example, or the Asian businesses. I didn't even see the rise of the Chinese businesses.
There's hundreds of them.
I didn't pick that, right? Yeah. But I just think there's going to be nothing special about them whatsoever. And they were...
Let's look at the forces. The counter positioning is now largely gone because there's people counter positioning against them.
That's right. They're the incumbent, essentially.
In EVs.
They're the incumbent, although not big enough in sales to really warrant being a full incumbent.
Have they got scale? I think we thought they'd have scale, but I'm not sure they do.
I'll tell you what their scale is. They can make their own stuff and they can sell some of their own stuff to other companies.
And there's the charging, although they've pulled back on the charging stuff.
But the fact that their components that they make are predominantly their own components, especially the battery, right? Yep. I think that's scale.
Yeah.
And that might even be some...
I think they've got scale, but is it a real power? Is there scale as a power?
Well, that's a good point. Well, they've got no scale compared to the big car makers around the world. But I was going to say, because the battery might actually be the rarest of all forces. It might be a cornered resource, that battery.
Is BYD's batteries much worse?
I don't know.
Toyota's working on the solid state battery. I'm not sure. I don't think they've got cornered resource. Okay. They've got some.
I'm
brand.
always hunting for.
I think they've got some brand, although Elon's destroyed most of it with his ranting.
They had a very strong,
amazing brand, and then Elon just alienated their main customers, who were probably the centre left type Democrats.
In fact, I would say, I say to you, there's 3 things that brand can drive: lower acquisition cost, pricing power, and probably trust. Like that, you'll trust. Sure. He had all 3 of those with the Tesla
certainly had
brand.
He had 0 acquisition costs almost. Like he owned the end to end. They spent 0 on advertising. It was an incredible.
And he had pricing power because those cars are expensive. And the problem is the brand has lost its pricing power, and that is one reason the Chinese companies are slaughtering him.
Yeah, so he's got. So I think we could say brand has been diminished to the point of being irrelevant.
Well, diminished. I wouldn't say irrelevant, but diminished. Yeah.
Process power, I don't think so. A little bit of process power because they're vertical. So I think that's probably all they have.
I tell you how you know they have process power, because some of the big players in the world, like Toyota, are struggling to compete in EVs.
Well, Toyota was mild, but I don't think you can compare them just to. You got to compare them to BYD, BMW, who have caught up to a large degree. Right, so I think they've got a bit of process power because they're so vertical, but it's not what they were 3. I think you look at all their powers, and they've all been diminished. Like brand almost completely, process power somewhat. I don't think they got cornered resource. They've lost all the counter position. What else is left?
So I think Tesla will be, or network effect, but like they never really managed to pull it off. And so
only they've had a charging network exclusive, which I don't have anymore.
I maintain my massively premature comment of 10 years ago, which is Tesla will be a footnote in history.
It was probably more like 5 years. Like Tesla 10 years ago wasn't worth much. It was like a $20 billion business. It only really started going in like 2020.
Yeah, but even when but I think even at the very early stages and people were going crazy for it.
Yeah.
And I just thought
when the S came out.
Yeah, and maybe when the S came out and people were loving it, and I just thought one is when I looked at the S, I thought this. I rode in one, and
you
thought
you don't have one, do you?
No, I thought this doesn't feel like a prestige car to me. It doesn't justify the cost.
Yeah.
And it just always felt to me that they were going to struggle to be the dominant player. And I might just be lucky with the call because it could have gone either way. But it always felt to me that they were going to struggle to be more than a footnote in history. I felt
they were always a great business. It was grossly overvalued, and they were a $50 to $100 billion business that was at one point worth $1.2 billion. That just never made sense. And there was the whole Elon Musk acolytes.
1.2 trillion, do you mean?
Trillion,
yeah.
Both a billion, a trillion.
Yeah.
And it's still at 700 billion.
Yeah.
So it's still extremely one of the most valuable companies in the world. I think
you can't short it because I think that there is still a religious component to it.
I think you can.
Because of the Trump thing as well.
Would I short it with my own money? No. Would I short it in the Contrarians portfolio that we're not actually putting money on that eventually will be proven right with, hopefully? Yes. So I think it's clear. I think this is a business that goes down to sub $100 billion.
What's that argument? Would I short it with my own money? No. Would I short it with money that's not really money? Yes. Yeah. Isn't that everything? There's no downside of losing that one.
We're putting reputation on it.
I think I don't think you can short it because now that Musk has aligned himself with Trump, it's the merger of two religions. And so how can you fight two religions coming together as one?
I think the only thing that is keeping this market cap at above 100 billion is the Musk's storytelling of this EV story he tells. And I think he tells the story well.
What about the Cybertruck? That's amazing, the Cybertruck.
It's terrible.
Why?
It looks terrible. Who the hell wants it? It doesn't work.
It's selling and it does work. Yeah, it's got great reviews. It's got some problems. It's coming off the lines dirty and stuff, but that's operational problems.
Yeah.
But the reviews have been amazing for it.
Well, that's not going to be worth 700 billion.
Well, I agree with you.
It's maybe like $1 billion of market cap there. I think it's EVs, so autonomous is holding it up and Google is killing it in autonomous.
I agree.
This autonomous is, this will be in my mind, if you think of what do you reckon the biggest tech trend in the last 20 years has been?
The biggest tech trend in the last 20 years.
AI. One of those two. AI last 2 years.
No, the biggest 20 years, what's that? 2000, let's call it?
Yeah.
When
2005.
When was it
mobile?
When was the iPhone?
04, 07.
Smartphone.
Yeah. So mobile.
That's been the biggest tech trend. Yep.
I think this is more impactful than
smartphones. It could be.
Think of how your life changes.
It'll certainly wipe out a lot more jobs than smartphones did.
But it also creates so much efficiency. Think of the second order effect.
It'll be very cheap. It'll be very cheap for driving people and stuff around to people who have got no jobs and no money to buy anything and nowhere to go.
You don't need to park a car anymore. So think of it, the city, all these car parks in the city. You don't need those car parks anymore. Cars are one of those great, and this is why our friends at Turo have such a great business. Cars are used 5% of the time.
Yeah.
You'll be able to, and this is one Elon Musk's great pitch as well, and this is why I think Google's doing such a good job of it. The 95% of the time you're not using a car, that can be making you money. So most people don't need cars. You can just jump in this. It's going to completely change the way we allocate resources.
I totally agree with that. But what do you think about its effect on public transport? Is that the end of public transport?
I think it changes it. I think there's still a need
because it's cheaper. Public transport will be cheaper for the individual.
It'll be cheaper. It'll be much more comfortable. So if you go, because there'll be less people on there. I think it changes. So I live 10 minutes from the city in Albert Park. So I'll often ride a bike by myself. But if I'm with kids, public transport's just a bit of a hassle.
Yeah.
Putting two kids and Leslie Ann on a tram is going to take us 40 minutes. It just isn't worth it. It's much worth it while driving. Versus if I could jump in an autonomous vehicle and be in for $5, it comes to my, it's clean. I'll do that for sure. But if I'm living in Frankston, it's an hour train ride. You're not going to take. I don't think I take an autonomous vehicle.
It'll be very expensive.
So I think it's great for last.
Although I think you know this that I love catching trains.
I love catching trains too,
but they've become quite expensive. The prices have really increased. Yeah,
well, not relative to Ubers though.
Well, not compared to an Uber, but the price of public transport has certainly been affected by inflation.
But I think where it. So I think
at least they run in
almost
Melbourne.
Most certainly Victoria. I can't speak for other states, but it's pretty much a flat rate. So if you go from Frankston, it's $6. If you go from Albert Park, it's $6. So it doesn't make any sense. This is where I think this will be the most transformational technology of the last 2 decades, and I think it will improve people's lives incredibly.